In studio, joining us now, JD Scholten, a candidate in Iowa's 4th district.
Yep.
Welcome to the studio.
Thank you for
Good to have
having
you
me.
here.
Yeah, likewise.
We don't get to meet a lot of actual candidates. They're people on the screen. So we're glad to have you here. And we got a lot to talk about. So we were, I'm gonna start off with, we were talking before the show about the fact that you're running in Iowa. And with all the stress of a normal congressional race, but also it's, the whole country's eyes are on Iowa. How does that affect your run for Congress?
Well, we've been trying to figure out what's the best way for us to run while the caucuses are all going on. Currently, we're on a 39 county tour, going to all 39 counties and calling it the Don't Forget About Us tour and going to towns of under 1,000 people. Because these are a lot of issues that don't get the headlines. And so a lot of these small communities are struggling to keep their grocery stores. And yet we're the second most agriculture producing district in America. We have these get big or get off the farm policies that are hurting our farmers. And so because of the caucuses, it's been nice because we can amplify some of our messaging and the messaging of the district.
Do you find that for you as you're running in a primary, is it helpful to you to have, is it a little bit easier to get media coverage of your race? I mean, I know that they're generally there for the presidential races, but they're at least in the neighborhood. Is that helpful?
Well, we're probably the only race in America where we don't have a primary and the incumbent does. It's a unique situation, but so that allows the presidential candidates, they don't want to choose on the primary, or if there was a primary.
That's true, yeah.
So we actually been doing events with a lot of them, and I think it's been great because a lot of our message has kind of gotten into their talking points. And one of the things I constantly am pushing them is holding our antitrust laws accountable, especially in agriculture. It's just, that is something that the progressive movement should be picking up more and more on. It's just, our farmers are being handcuffed right now. And you look back of the history of my district, we had Tom Harkin and Berkeley Bedell, two prairie populists, really push that message back in the day, and now it's coming alive again.
I only mention this because you've been talking about the farmers, but I noticed we don't generally as a country talk all that much about farmers, despite the fact that they're still a large part of the economy, very important, obviously, and it's a very traditional American industry that's often forgotten. But I saw today, obviously, Donald Trump in the past had provided some aid to farmers who've been hurt by the trade war, among other things, and it showed that for the most part, the way it was distributed, the big farms were getting the most aid, and the family farmers, the ones who arguably needed the most, again, were being left behind.
Yeah, I mean, we have these get big or get off the farm policies, and whether it's the aid because of the tariffs or even just our trade policies from before or our tax policies from before, it's sucking the wealth out of our rural communities, and these farmers are hurting. And if we ended the trade war tomorrow, because of market consolidation, because of the abuse of the renewable fuel standard, a lot of these things are hurting our farmers. And I saw a tweet from a Republican that said, if things don't change, all farmers are just going to end up contract employees in the next generation, and that's really sad.
Yeah. Except from the point of view of some of those large companies that probably like to set up that system.
I mean, that's the struggle. You see Cargill paying out their 125 members $5 million a piece. Well, our farmers are barely making cost of production. You ask any pork producer in the 4th district how they did in 2017. Well, Smithfield is owned by China Pork, and the CEO of China Pork made $291 million in 2017. Where these farmers are just handcuffed. And when you have these multinational corporations dictating the policies, the farmers are being squeezed on the input side. They're being told how to farm, and then the markets are not there. And so of the consumer dollar, less than 15 cents makes it back to the farmer, which is an all-time low.
Okay, well, you are running against Steve King, potentially. I mean, he's, as you said, he's in a primary and he's got a well-funded opponent, apparently. We're gonna turn to him in a few minutes, but let's start off, for people who might not be familiar with your candidacy yet, where are you coming from? What's your history in politics, your history with the state?
Yeah, so I have not the most traditional running for Congress. I was born and raised in the district, 5th generation Iowan, come from a long line of farmers and educators. But first to be raised in town, I grew up in Sioux City, Iowa, the largest city in the district. I chased minor league baseball. I played minor league baseball, chased that dream. Afterwards, worked as a paralegal. And ultimately in 2016, after the election, I wanted to get more involved, but I didn't know what that meant. And I went to visit my grandma, who's my inspiration in life, and she told me, JD, you got to move back and take care of the farm. And I was living out of state, so I moved back and started my own consulting, working as a paralegal, a little thing. And then I just saw what was happening in the district. And for about a month, I saw that there was nobody in this race on the Democratic side in the last cycle. And so we launched a very humble grassroots campaign that just grew and grew and grew. And as a result of what we were able to do, we moved the needle 24 points last cycle, which is third most amongst all challengers.
And the race was within 3 points,
yeah,
I believe?
3 points.
And this is a race that originally wasn't going to be contested.
There was nobody when we launched, and so we didn't know, we didn't hear anything from anybody, and so that's when I said, you know what, I can't sit on the sidelines. I don't know if I could raise $5, but I know I can get out there to the people. And my political heroes, the Berkeley Bedells, the Tom Harkins, the Paul Wellstones, what we learned was if you get out there to the people, prove you're trustworthy and prove that you're gonna fight for your constituents, you're gonna earn votes. And we got 25,000 more votes than there are Democrats in the district. Wow. And with moving the needle that much, we outperformed the top of the ticket by 17%. And so we even though we lost, we did so much, we have to do this again.
Yeah, and that certainly provides some momentum moving into running against them again.
Yeah.
So you moved the needle a lot. Yeah. The district is still thought of as being somewhat conservative, though. Yeah. So tell me about your platform, the issues you're choosing to run on in a place that's traditionally voted for Republicans. How does that influence your slate of programs?
I mean, you run as who you are. That's what I feel. And so we talk about healthcare every day. We talk about economy that works for everyone, not just the 1% and the corporations. And we talk about cleaning up Washington. And so we call it fix, fight, secure. Fix healthcare, fight for an economy that works for everyone, and secure our democracy by cleaning up Washington. And a lot of that resonates to people all over the political spectrum. We also talk a lot about climate change because there's so much potential in my district because it's so agriculture heavy. We're the second most agriculture producing district in America. We have a huge opportunity to take the carbon out into the air and put it into our ground, and it would help our farmers out. We have a lot of things like that could really be a win-win for not only our farmers, but Iowa and our nation and the planet.
So I was reading up on your campaign, and you've been doing a lot of town halls, which is obviously helpful for getting your message out, but also it's a pretty strong contrast from Steve King, who up until recently was not interested in doing those.
Right.
So as you're meeting these voters, what are some of the things that come up most often with them?
Well, especially right now, because we're doing it in towns of under 1,000 people, it's more rural. We've been asked. We asked to hear stories as much as it's made talking, and so it's been phenomenal. We heard a woman from Hardin County who she said her inhaler would cost her $240 a month, and she told her doctor, "I can't afford that anymore," and he got her a cheaper one for $188 a month. But ultimately, the doctor goes, "Just go to Canada." That's where we're at, and that's absurd. And almost every gas station in my district, there's a donation box from someone who just got sick or someone who just got in the hospital. We have so many GoFundMe sites and pancake breakfasts. It's ridiculous. We're too good of a nation, and so we talk about, hey, you know what? Universal healthcare, Medicare for all. That should be our goal, and whether it takes steps to get there or not, like that. It would help everybody. You look how Canada got that movement for universal healthcare. It was Saskatchewan farmers, and so I push our rural areas, saying this is up to us. If it's going to come from within, if we really want to do this, and so.
And so he has started doing some town halls, Steve King. Do you believe that it's the pressure that you've been putting on him in that area?
I absolutely, like he wouldn't have done this if we would have lost by 20 points. And so, I mean, again, we lost, but there's a lot of things that came out of this, and him being held accountable, and just he has 4 Republicans running against him in a primary.
One who raised more than $500,000 recently, I believe.
Yeah, and so it's going to be interesting. But at the end of the day, we're running on what we're for and not just who we're against. And it just came out this morning, the Sioux City Journal, which is my hometown paper, largest paper in the district. The #1 article they had, or the #1 story they had in 2019 was him being stripped of his committees in January for his comments relating to white supremacy and white nationalism.
So that's really astounded me. When you've been talking to voters, maybe you've talked to some people who had supported him in the past. What do they think about having like half a congressman or maybe 2/3 of a congressman.
Well, I think that's an added layer to this cycle. And we already saw there was an anti-King sentiment last cycle, and we picked up on that, and we showed that, hey, we're the healthy alternative to that. And so now, not only are we the anti-King sentiment, there's also what is he doing for us? And I think that's the thing. When you have 70,000 more Republicans than Democrats in the district, it's not easy. And for a lot of folks, they just check that box because he's a Republican, and they think, for whatever reason, he's just like everyone else. But then we're starting to see all his controversial statements add up, and that's why we think we're going to win this time.
Is there like a sense of embarrassment? Like there might be people who are like, I voted Republican my whole life. I like Republicans, but this guy, he's been a joke for years.
Yep.
It's just that a lot of people around the country didn't know about it up until recently, I guess.
Absolutely. There's a famous T-shirt company in Des Moines called Raygun that has a shirt that says "Dear America, sorry for Steve King, sincerely Iowa." And it's been a popular T-shirt for almost probably like 6-7 years now.
Yeah.
And it's nuts, and it is an embarrassment. I mean, so many people that I meet across the nation who are originally from Iowa, and it's like, that's not us. And it's hard to say that's not us when he continues to get reelected. And so that's one of our things, but we try to not focus on him. We talk about what we're for a lot. And I think that's the thing that people are really engaging in our campaign is they like what we're talking about because, and they happen to be a lot of progressive issues because that's the need of the district.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it certainly must help you spreading those messages, but also it might remind some people that like, oh, we can have a serious congressman who's not just there as some sort of sideshow.
Absolutely, and the needs of our district, they're out there, and it's rural America is getting harder and harder to live, and so that's what we're truly trying to do is be that piece of the Democratic Party in rural America.
And where can people find out more about your candidacy?
Everything ScholtenForIowa.com, SCHOLTEN, number 4 for Iowa's 4th Congressional District, IOWA.com.
Awesome. Okay, well, great to have you in studio. Good luck on the race.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.